You have 4 seconds. Who hit you? I remember standing in that hallway like it was yesterday. Rain hammered the windows so hard I thought the glass might shatter. My brother Dorian was somewhere upstairs, probably laughing with investors who didn't know what kind of man he really was. And I was here, staring at a woman whose hands wouldn't stop shaking. Her name was Elira Quinn, 26 years old. Black dress that looked like it came from a thrift store. She was refilling champagne glasses at our annual gala, trying to blend into the marble walls like she didn't exist. But I saw her. I always saw the ones who didn't belong in rooms like this, because once upon a time, neither did I. The Venora estate glowed like a palace that night. Chandeliers dripped crystal. Gold accents caught every flicker of candlelight. 200 guests in designer clothes pretended to care about charity while my family's name bought their silence. This was power. This was control. This was everything my father built before he died and left me to clean up the mess. But power doesn't mean anything when you see a woman with a bruise on her wrist and blood at the corner of her mouth. "Miss Quinn," I said quietly, stepping closer. "Look at me." She didn't. Her eyes stayed on the floor. Her shoulders curled inward like she wanted to disappear. I'd seen that posture before in my mother years ago, before she finally left my father, before she took nothing and ran. If you've ever seen someone hurt and stayed silent, pay attention right now, because silence protects monsters. And tonight, I wasn't staying silent anymore. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. I took one step forward. She took one step back. The hallway was empty except for us and the sound of rain. Somewhere in the distance, a violin played something soft and sad. The kind of music rich people use to feel deep without actually feeling anything. "I'm not going to hurt you," I told her. My voice came out rougher than I meant. But someone did, and I need to know who. Her lip trembled. "It's nothing, Mr. Venora. It's not nothing. You pointed a herist. Red marks. Finger-shaped. Fresh. That's assault. And it happened here. In my house." She finally looked up at me. Her eyes were brown and wet and full of something I recognized too well. Fear mixed with exhaustion. The kind that comes from fighting battles nobody else can see. "Please," she whispered. "I can't lose this job." That's when I knew. Someone on my staff. Someone in my family. Someone who thought they owned her because they signed her paycheck. "You have 4 seconds," I repeated, softer this time. "Who hit you?" She opened her mouth. Closed it. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she didn't make a sound. And somehow, that silence told me everything I needed to know. The person who hurt her wasn't just powerful. They were untouchable. Or so they thought. I pulled out my phone and made one call. My head of security answered on the first ring. "Lock down the estate. Nobody leaves until I say so. And pull the security footage from the loading bay. Last 2 hours." Elira's eyes went wide. "Mr. Venora, please don't." "Go home," I said. "Take tomorrow off. Paid. And if anyone asks you about tonight, you tell them to call me directly." She stared at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. Maybe I had. Maybe kindness was foreign in a world like ours. But as she walked away, I saw her glance back once. Just once. And in that glance was a question I'd spend the next week trying to answer. Why would a millionaire CEO care about a waitress nobody else noticed? The truth? I didn't know yet, but I was about to find out just how deep the rot in my family ran. By morning, I hadn't slept. I sat in my office on the 32nd floor, watching the sun rise over the city like it had every right to. My coffee was cold. My tie was loose. And on my desk sat a folder that changed everything. Inside were photographs, hospital records, payroll documents, and a name I'd hoped I wouldn't see. Dorian Venora, my brother. The investigator I'd hired worked fast. Too fast, like he'd been expecting this call for months. He laid it all out in black and white, literally. Security footage showed Dorian cornering Elira in the service hallway 3 nights ago. Showed him grabbing her wrist when she tried to walk away. Showed him whispering something in her ear that made her freeze. I didn't need audio to know what he said. I'd heard him say it to other women before. Women who came forward and then suddenly changed their minds after receiving mysterious checks and non-disclosure agreements. My stomach turned. "There's more," the investigator said. His name was Marcus Cole, 40-something, former detective who left the force because he got tired of watching rich people buy their way out of consequences. Her brother worked at one of your warehouses. Noam Quinn. 3 months ago, a machine malfunctioned, crushed his hand. He filed for workers' comp. I looked up, and your brother personally denied the claim. So it was user error. The kid's hand is permanently damaged. Can't work. Can't afford the surgeries. So his sister started taking extra shifts to cover the medical bills. The room felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were closing in. How many extra shifts? 4 jobs, Mr. Venora. She works 4 jobs. I set the folder down carefully because if I didn't, I was going to throw it through the window. And Dorian knew this. Marcus nodded. He knew. And when she rejected his advances, he made sure she knew exactly how much power he had over her family. I stood up, walked to the window, looked down at the city below, where people were just starting their morning commutes. People who thought the world was fair. People who thought justice existed. If you've ever been blamed for someone else's sins, keep watching. Because some storms aren't meant to destroy you. They're meant to clean your path. I turned back to Marcus. I want every file on my brother's dealings for the last 3 years. Every contract he signed. Every expense report. Every woman who filed a complaint and then dropped it. That'll take time. You have 24 hours. Marcus raised an eyebrow. What are you planning? I'm planning to do what I should have done years ago. I picked up my phone and texted my lawyer. 3 words. Start the process. Because here's what people don't understand about power. Real power isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. Real power moves in silence, like water finding cracks in concrete, slowly and completely. My brother thought he was untouchable because our fathers will tie our inheritances together. Thought I'd never risk the company to stop him. Thought blood was thicker than conscience. He was wrong. I thought about Alira's face last night. The way she flinched when I stepped closer. The way she apologized for bleeding. The way she protected the person who hurt her because she was too scared of what he'd take next. My father used to say, "Cashin, mercy is for people who can afford it." I used to believe him. But standing there in my office, looking at photos of a 26-year-old woman working herself to death to save her brother, I realized something. Mercy wasn't about affordability. It was about remembering you're human when everyone around you forgets. I made another call, this time to my assistant. Clear my schedule for the rest of the week and find out where Alira Quinn lives. Sir, is this about? Just do it. Because if my brother thought he could hurt someone under my roof and walk away clean, he didn't know me at all. The storm outside had stopped, but inside my family, it was just beginning. And I had a feeling Dorian wasn't going to like how it ended. 48 hours before the board meeting. That's what the countdown clock said on my computer screen. 48 hours before I'd face the board of directors and explain why I was systematically dismantling everything my brother touched. 48 hours before Dorian realized he'd lost. I drove to Alira's apartment myself. No driver, no security, just me in a car that cost more than most people made in a year, pulling up to a building that looked like it might collapse if someone sneezed too hard. The neighborhood was quiet. Not peaceful quiet, survival quiet. The kind where people mind their business because they've learned that's the safest way to live. Graffiti covered the walls. A broken street light flickered. Somewhere a dog barked and didn't stop. I found her apartment on the 3rd floor. The hallway smelled like old cooking oil and something I couldn't name. I knocked twice. The door opened a crack. Alira's eye appeared, then widened. "Mr. Venora, can I come in?" She hesitated, then opened the door wider. The apartment was tiny. One room that served as bedroom, living room, and kitchen all at once. Clean though, painfully clean, like she spent what little free time she had scrubbing away evidence of how hard her life was. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly, not looking at me. I know. I stayed by the door, hands in my pockets, trying to look less like the millionaire who could destroy her life with a phone call and more like a human being. I came to apologize. She laughed. Actually laughed. It was a bitter sound. "For what? You didn't hit me." "No, but my name did. My family did. And I'm sorry." She sat down on the edge of her bed, which was also her couch, and put her face in her hands. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she looked up at me with those tired eyes and asked the question I'd been dreading. Why do you care? I could have given her the easy answer. Could have said something about corporate responsibility or family values or legal liability. But standing there in her tiny apartment, looking at someone who'd been stepped on by people like me her whole life, I couldn't lie. Because I know what it's like, I said. To be powerless. To watch someone you love suffer and not be able to stop it. She studied my face like she was trying to decide if I was telling the truth. You're a millionaire. I wasn't always. That surprised her. Good. Let her be surprised. Let her see that monsters don't always start out monstrous. Sometimes they're made, piece by people who should have protected them. My father, I continued, he built Venora Holdings from nothing. And he destroyed everything in his path to do it, including my mother, including me. I watched him hurt her for years before she finally left. And you know what I did? Nothing. I was too young, too scared, too convinced that this was just how the world worked. Alira's expression softened slightly. How old were you? 12 when she left. 15 when I realized I was turning into him. I took a breath. I swore I'd never be that person. Never let power turn me into something that hurt people weaker than me. And yet here we are, she said softly. Your brother is done. I said it with such finality that she actually flinched. In 48 hours, the board will vote to restructure the company. I'm removing him from every position of authority he holds. Her eyes went wide. You can do that. I could do a lot of things when I stop worrying about family loyalty and start worrying about what's right. She stood up slowly, like she was afraid sudden movement might shatter whatever fragile thing was happening between us. He'll fight you. Let him. He'll destroy you. He'll try. She walked to the window, looked out at the broken streetlight. My brother, she said quietly, his name is Noam. He wanted to be a mechanic. Loved cars. Used to spend hours watching videos about engines and transmissions. That warehouse job was supposed to be temporary, just until he saved enough for trade school. I already knew this from Marcus's report, but I let her tell me anyway, because sometimes people need to say the story out loud to make it real. When that machine crushed his hand, she continued, voice shaking now, it didn't just take his job. It took his dream. And when your brother denied his claim, he took our mother too. She died 6 months later. Heart attack, they said. But I know better. She died from stress. From watching her son lose everything and not being able to fix it. I wanted to say something comforting, something meaningful, but words felt useless against that kind of pain. I'm sorry, was all I could manage. She turned to face me, tears on her cheeks, but fire in her eyes. Don't be sorry. Be better. And just like that, I understood. She wasn't asking for revenge. Wasn't asking for money or pity or rescue. She was asking me to be the kind of person who made sure this never happened to anyone else. I will, I promised. And I meant it. I left her apartment with a new kind of weight on my shoulders. Not the crushing weight of guilt that was already there. This was different. This was purpose. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Found something. You need to see this. I got in my car and drove straight to his office. What he showed me made my blood run cold. Dorian hadn't just hurt Alira and her brother. There were 12 other cases, 12 other families, 12 other lives destroyed by my brother's cruelty and covered up by his lawyers. And every single one had my family's name attached to it. 48 hours suddenly didn't feel like enough time, but it was all I had. So I got to work. The lowest point came on a Tuesday. I should have seen it coming. Should have known that Dorian wouldn't just sit back and let me dismantle his empire without a fight. But I underestimated him. Underestimated how far he'd go to protect himself. The board meeting was in 24 hours. I had files, evidence, testimony from 3 victims willing to go on record. I had Marcus ready to present everything to the board in a way they couldn't ignore. I thought I was ready. Then the news broke. Venora Holdings under federal investigation for money laundering and fraud. I stared at my computer screen, watching the headlines multiply across every business site. My phone exploded with calls. Investors, lawyers, board members demanding answers. And I had none, because this wasn't about me. This was about shell companies and offshore accounts and falsified contracts. all bearing my signature. My signature. It's a setup, Marcus said, standing in my office while I tried not to put my fist through the wall. Your brother's been planning this for months. Every document is forged, but they're good forgeries. Good enough to trigger an investigation. How long? My voice sounded hollow even in my own ears. Investigation? Could take years. And until then, the board won't vote for restructuring. I finished his sentence. They won't let me touch anything while I'm under federal investigation. Marcus nodded grimly. He boxed you in, Cashin. Either you back off, or you go down with him. I sat down heavily in my chair. Outside, the city kept moving like nothing had changed. Like my entire life wasn't imploding in real time. If you've ever faced a choice between what's right and what's safe, stay with me. Because sometimes the hardest battles are the ones nobody else can see. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Cashin. Dorian's voice. Smooth. Pleased with himself. Quite a morning, isn't it? My hand tightened around the phone. What did you do? Me? I'm just a concerned board member protecting our family's legacy. I could hear the smile in his voice. You wanted to play hero. Fine. But heroes in our world don't last long. They get investigated. They get destroyed. They learn that some dragons shouldn't be fought. You forged documents with my signature. Prove it. He laughed. You think the feds care about your feelings? They have evidence. They have patterns. They have years of transactions that point straight at you. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to drop this crusade. You're going to tell that little waitress and her crippled brother that you can't help them. And you're going to remember that blood is thicker than conscience. Every word he spoke made me want to reach through the phone, and if I don't, I asked quietly, then I make sure you spend the next decade in prison explaining to cellmates why a millionaire CEO decided to throw his life away for people who don't matter. The line went dead. I sat there for a long time, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to silence. Marcus waited. He'd worked with me long enough to know when to speak and when to stay quiet. Finally, I set the phone down. He's right. Marcus's expression darkened. Don't. If I keep pushing, I lose everything. The company, my freedom, any ability to help anyone ever again. I looked at him. He wins. So that's it. Marcus leaned forward. You're just going to let him walk? I didn't answer right away. Couldn't. Because part of me, the part that sounded too much like my father, whispered that survival was more important than justice. That protecting myself was logical. Smart. The only rational choice. But then I thought about Alira's apartment. Thought about Gnome's crushed hand. Thought about 12 other families whose lives were ruined by my family's name. And I realized something. My father was wrong. Mercy wasn't about affordability. And neither was justice. No, I said finally. I'm not letting him walk. I'm just changing tactics. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Meaning if you want to play dirty, we play smart. I stood up, energy returning to my limbs. He forged my signature on documents. That means somewhere there's a paper trail. Somewhere there's proof he set this up. We find it. Cashin, that could take. We have 24 hours. I grabbed my jacket. So we'd better get started. We worked through the night. Marcus called in every favor he had. I accessed files I probably shouldn't have had access to. And slowly, piece by piece, we built a countercase. Dorian was smart, but he was also arrogant. And arrogant people make mistakes. We found a smoking gun at 4 in the morning. An email chain between Dorian and a lawyer I'd never heard of discussing insurance policies against my moral crusade. Discussing forged signatures and planted evidence and contingency plans. He'd been building this trap for 6 months, but he'd been stupid enough to document it. Got him, Marcus whispered, staring at the screen. I should have felt triumphant. Should have felt vindicated. But all I felt was tired. Tired of fighting my own blood. Tired of living in a world where doing the right thing required this much strategy. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. He's gone. I frowned. What the? Then another text. Your brother. He's disappeared. No one's seen him since yesterday. My blood ran cold. I called Dorian's number. Straight to voicemail. I called his assistant. His lawyer. His favorite club. Nothing. Dorian Venora had vanished. And on my desk, delivered by a courier I never saw, sat an envelope with my name on it. Inside was a single note in Dorian's handwriting. You'll regret this. The truth isn't what you think. And by the time you figure it out, it'll be too late. 24 hours until the board meeting. And my brother was in the wind. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. While Dorian hid, I rebuilt. That's the thing about power people don't tell you. It's not about the big moves. It's about the quiet ones. The ones nobody sees until it's too late to stop them. The board meeting happened without him. I presented Marcus's evidence. Showed them the forged documents. Showed them the email chain. Showed them 12 families destroyed by negligence and cruelty. And then I showed them something else. Over the past 72 hours, I said, standing at the head of that mahogany conference table while men twice my age watched with hard eyes, I've been restructuring. Not as revenge, not as punishment, but as insurance. I pulled up a presentation. Numbers and graphs and legal documents. I'm establishing the Quinn Fund, I continued, named after two people who should never have been hurt by this company. Every victim of negligence, every denied claim, every family destroyed by our mistakes, they'll be compensated. Fully, generously. No ideas, no silence clauses. The board members shifted uncomfortably. That'll cost $40 million. I said it like it was pocket change. Because to men like us it was, which I'm personally funding by liquidating a portion of my shares. Dead silence. You're diluting your own position? Someone finally asked. I'm doing what's right. I looked each of them in the eye. And if that makes me weak in your eyes, then I don't want your respect anyway. The vote took 10 minutes. Unanimous approval. Not because they cared about justice, but because I made it financially and legally safer to side with me than against me. That's power. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind. As I left the boardroom, my lawyer pulled me aside. That was bold. That was necessary. Dorian's still out there. He could come back. Let him. I looked out the window at the city below. I'm done playing his games. But the universe wasn't done with me yet. 24 hours after the board meeting, I got a call from a hospital. Elira's brother Noam had collapsed. Internal bleeding. Complications from his untreated injuries. He was in surgery. I drove straight there. Found Elira in the waiting room, still wearing her work uniform from whatever job she'd just left. Her eyes were red. Her hands were shaking. She looked up when I walked in. You came. Of course I came. She stood up slowly. They said it'll take 6 hours. Maybe more. They said, her voice broke. They said if he doesn't make it. I didn't think. I just pulled her into a hug. She collapsed against my chest and cried. Not the quiet kind of crying. The kind that comes from somewhere deep and primal. The kind that says I can't do this anymore. He's going to make it, I said, even though I had no way of knowing. And when he does, he'll have the best rehabilitation money can buy. He'll go to that trade school. He'll become a mechanic. I promise. She pulled back, looked up at me with those tired eyes. Why are you doing this? Same question she'd asked before. But this time, I had a better answer. Because someone should have done it for my mother. And no one did. We sat together in that waiting room for 6 hours. Didn't talk much. Didn't need to. Sometimes presence is louder than words. When a surgeon finally came out, his smile said everything. He's going to be okay. Recovery will be long, but he'll be okay. Elira burst into tears again. But this time they were relief tears. Hope tears. The kind that said maybe the world isn't completely broken after all. I left the hospital at sunrise. Exhausted. Emotionally drained. But lighter somehow. I thought about Dorian out there somewhere, plotting his return. Thought about the empire I'd just fractured to make things right. Thought about all the ways this could still go wrong. And I realized something. I wasn't scared anymore. Because the hardest part wasn't fighting Dorian. It was fighting the version of myself that would have looked the other way. That would have protected power over people. That would have become my father. But I didn't. And that was worth more than any fortune. My phone buzzed. Email from an unknown sender. Subject line, you wanted the truth. Now you'll get it. I opened it. Inside was a single photograph. Grainy, dark, but unmistakable. Dorian, tied to a chair, blood on his face. And behind him, written on the wall in red paint. 48 hours. My heart stopped. This wasn't about business anymore. This wasn't about justice or revenge or family loyalty. Someone had taken my brother, and they'd done it in my name. The countdown had started again, but this time I wasn't in control. And the person who was? I had no idea, but I was about to find out. Who took Dorian? And what do they want from Cashin? Drop a comment with your theory right now, because nothing in this story is what it seems. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button. We're just getting started. And trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. The choice Cashin has to make, it'll change everything you thought you knew about power, justice, and redemption. See you in Chapter 6. Her apartment smelled like wild lilac and exhaustion. I stood outside Alira's door at 11 at night, still wearing the suit I'd put on 16 hours ago. My tie was gone. My shirt was wrinkled. And in my hand was that photograph. Dorian tied to a chair, blood on his face, terror in his eyes. I knocked twice. Soft. Careful. The kind of knock that says I'm not here to hurt you. The door opened a crack. Alira's face appeared, eyes widening when she saw me. Mr. Venora? What are you? Can I come in? Please. She hesitated, then opened the door wider. The apartment looked different tonight. Warmer somehow. A single candle burned on the windowsill. Soft music played from a phone somewhere. She'd been cooking. I could smell rice and something spiced. Is Noam okay? I asked immediately. He's sleeping. The doctor said he can come home in a few days. She studied my face. You look terrible. I feel terrible. I handed her the photograph. Someone sent me this 2 hours ago. She took it, looked at it, and went completely still. For a long moment, she didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at that image like she was trying to memorize every detail. Alira. She set the photo down carefully on her small table. When did you get this? Tonight. Anonymous email. No return address. No message. Just a photo and a countdown, 48 hours. I watched her closely. Do you know something? She walked to the window, looked out at the broken streetlight that still hadn't been fixed. Her shoulders were tense. Her hands were clasped so tight her knuckles went pale. There's something I didn't tell you, she said quietly. About that night. The night he hit me. I waited. Let her tell it at her own pace. He didn't just hit me because I rejected him. Her voice trembled. He hit me because I told him I knew. About the warehouse. About Noam's accident. About the 12 other families. She turned to face me. I'd been collecting evidence for months. Photos. Documents. Recordings. Everything. My heart started pounding. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't trust you. She said it simply. Honestly. You're his brother. You're a Venora. Why would I trust you? Fair point. And now I trust you. She walked closer, close enough that I could see tears gathering in her eyes. But there's more. After you started investigating, after you promised to help, I did something I shouldn't have. The air in the room felt heavier suddenly. What did you do? I contacted him. She swallowed hard. Your brother. I told him I had evidence. Told him I'd go to the police unless he turned himself in. Unless he confessed to everything. My blood ran cold. Alira. He laughed at me. Her voice broke. Said I was nobody. Said no one would believe a waitress over Venora. Said even if I had evidence, he'd make sure I disappear before I could use it. If you've ever wanted to rewrite your story after someone broke it, stay right here. Because sometimes the people we underestimate are the ones who change everything. So what did you do? I asked, even though part of me was afraid of the answer. She pulled out her phone, opened a folder, and handed it to me. Inside were dozens of photos, videos, audio recordings, everything she'd said and more. Months of surveillance, months of risk. I wasn't going to wait for permission, she said. I wasn't going to trust the system that protected him in the first place. So I found someone who could help. Someone who understood what it's like to be powerless. Who? She looked at me for a long time before answering. My cousin, Jamal. He was military, special forces. Came back from overseas 3 years ago and couldn't find work because of PTSD. Your company denied his disability claim too. The pieces started clicking together in my head. Alira, where's Jamal now? I don't know. She said it too quickly. I haven't seen him in weeks. She was lying. I could see it in the way her eyes shifted left, the way her breathing changed. But I didn't call her out, because I understood something now. This wasn't about my brother anymore. This was about a family pushed so far they'd stopped believing in justice and started believing in revenge. If Jamal has Dorian, I said carefully, he needs to let him go. Not for Dorian's sake, for his own. Because whatever Dorian did, whatever he deserves, kidnapping will destroy Jamal's life. Maybe his life is already destroyed. Elira's voice was sharp now, angry. Maybe some people don't get the luxury of following the rules because the rules were never written for them. She was right, and that's what made this so hard. I took a step closer to her, close enough to see the freckles on her nose, close enough to smell the lilac. Tell me where he is. I can't. Elira, I can't. She put her hand on my chest, not pushing me away, just resting there. Because if something happens to Jamal, it's my fault. I'm the one who told him what your brother did. I'm the one who put that rage in his head. And if he goes to prison for this... Her voice broke completely. I didn't think. I just pulled her close, let her cry against my shoulder the way she'd cried in the hospital. But this time was different. This time there was something else mixed in with the tears. Guilt, fear, and something I was starting to feel too, connection. We'll figure this out, I whispered into her hair. Together. But you have to trust me. She pulled back, looked up at me with those brown eyes. Why should I? Because I'm not asking you to trust my name. I'm asking you to trust me. I cupped her face gently. I know what it's like to want revenge, to want someone to hurt the way they hurt you. But it doesn't end there, Elira. It never ends there. She closed her eyes. Tears rolled down her cheeks. And when she opened them again, something had shifted. The old Venora estate, she whispered. Outside the city. The one your father used for. I know the place. My stomach dropped. That's where Jamal took him. She nodded. I stepped back, pulled out my phone, started to call Marcus. No police. Elira grabbed my arm. Promise me. No police. Jamal can't go to prison. He's all I have left besides Noam. I looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman who'd lost her mother, watched her brother get destroyed, worked 4 jobs to survive, and still found the strength to fight back. This woman who probably should have hated me, but instead trusted me with her family's darkest secret. Okay, I said. No police. But I'm going alone. No. If this goes wrong, I need you here. Safe. Taking care of Noam. I touched her cheek one more time. Trust me. She searched my face for a long moment, then nodded. I left her apartment with my heart pounding and my mind racing. The old Venora estate was 2 hours outside the city. Abandoned for years. The perfect place to hide someone. Or hurt them. My phone buzzed. Another email. Same unknown sender. This time, there was a message. 12 hours left. Come alone, or he dies. I got in my car and drove into the night, not knowing if I was driving toward justice or into a trap, but knowing one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same after tonight. The email arrived at 3:47 in the morning. I'd been driving for an hour, hands tight on the steering wheel. Rain starting to fall again, like the universe had a sense of drama. My phone lit up on the passenger seat, and I almost swerved trying to grab it. The message was short. You're late. He's running out of time. Attached was another photo. Dorian slumped forward in that chair, blood dripping from his nose. And in the corner of the frame, barely visible, a countdown timer. 11 hours, 42 minutes, and 33 seconds. 11 hours, 42 minutes, 33 seconds. My foot pressed harder on the gas. The old Venora estate sat at the end of a dirt road that barely existed anymore. Trees had grown over it. Weeds choked the driveway. The mansion itself looked like something from a horror movie. Windows broken, walls crumbling, ivy crawling up the stones like it was trying to pull the whole thing into the earth. My father had bought this place during his early years, back when his business was less empire and more organized crime. He'd used it for meetings he didn't want recorded, for deals that couldn't happen in daylight. I'd only been here twice as a kid, and both times I'd had nightmares for weeks after. Now I was back, and the nightmares were real. I parked half a mile away and walked the rest. No phone, no weapon, just me in the rain and the dark. If Jamal was watching, and he definitely was, I needed him to see I wasn't a threat. The front door was unlocked. It swung open with a creak that echoed through the empty halls. Inside, Everything was decay and shadows. Furniture covered in sheets. Portraits of ancestors I'd never met staring down with dead eyes. Jamal, my voice bounced off the walls. I'm here, alone, like you asked. Silence. I walked deeper into the house, following a path I barely remembered. The stairs to the basement were at the back, hidden behind what used to be a library. The door was open. Light flickered from below. Candlelight, maybe, or a lantern. I descended slowly, one hand on the wall for balance. The stairs were old, uneven. One wrong step, and I'd break my neck. At the bottom, the cellar opened into a wide space that smelled like earth and rust. And there, in the center, lit by a single camping lantern, was Dorian. He looked worse than the photos. His face was swollen. His shirt was torn. His hands were tied behind the chair, and his head hung forward like he'd given up fighting. Dorian, I called out. His head jerked up. His eyes found mine wide, desperate, terrified. Cashin, he croaked. Get me out of here. Please. He's crazy. Shut up. The voice came from the shadows. Deep, controlled, angry. A man stepped into the light. Tall, broad-shouldered, black, maybe 30 years old. Military buzz cut, scar across his left cheek. This had to be Jamal. You came, he said, looking at me like he was surprised. You asked me to. I asked a Venora to walk into a trap. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Didn't think you'd actually do it. I kept my hands visible, my voice calm. I'm here because Elira asked me to come. Because she's scared for you. Scared for me. Jamal stepped closer. She should be scared for herself. For Noam. For every person, this man. He kicked Dorian's chair, making him cry out, destroyed without a second thought. I know what he did. You don't know anything. Jamal's voice echoed through the cellar. You know paperwork. You know reports. You know numbers on a page. But you don't know what it's like to watch your family starve because some rich man decided your disability claim wasn't worth his time. You don't know what it's like to come home from war and realize the real enemy was waiting here all along. If you've ever faced a person who hurt you and chose something other than hate, share this moment. Because strength isn't about power, it's about control. I took a breath. You're right. I don't know, but I'm trying to fix it. Fix it. Jamal laughed again. You can't fix what's broken this bad. You can't put money on it and make it better. You can't. Then what do you want? I cut him off. You wanted to let you kill him? You wanted to watch while you become exactly what he is. That stopped him. His jaw clenched. His hands balled into fists. He deserves it, Jamal said quietly. Maybe. I looked at Dorian, who was crying now, pathetic and small. But you don't deserve what happens after. You don't deserve to spend the rest of your life in prison for him. Maybe that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. But Elira isn't. I took a step closer. She already lost her mother, lost her brother's future. You're all she has left, Jamal. If you do this, you take that from her too. His eyes flickered, doubt creeping in. He'll pay. I continued. I promise you that. He'll face trial. He'll lose everything. But this, I gestured at the cellar, the chair, the countdown clock ticking on the floor. This isn't justice. This is just more pain. For a long moment, nobody moved. The only sound was Dorian's quiet sobbing and the rain hammering the ground above us. Then Jamal spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. You know what the worst part is? I wanted to kill him. I brought him here planning to kill him. But when I had the chance, when I had the knife in my hand and he was begging, I couldn't do it. Because Elira was right. I'm not a monster. No, I agreed. You're not. But I'm not a hero either. He looked at me with tired eyes. I'm just a man who's tired of losing. I understood that. More than he knew. Let him go, I said softly. And let me help you. Both of you. Elira and Noam and you. Let me do what I should have done years ago. Jamal stared at me for what felt like forever. Then he walked over to Dorian, pulled out a knife, and cut the ropes. Dorian collapsed to the floor, gasping, crying broken. Get him out of here, Jamal said, not looking at me. Before I changed my mind, I helped Dorian to his feet. He could barely walk. I had to half carry him up the stairs, through the house, into the rain. When we reached the car, I looked back at the estate. Jamal stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the candlelight, watching us leave. I nodded once. He nodded back. And just like that, it was over. Or so I thought. because as I drove away with my brother sobbing in the passenger seat, my phone buzzed one more time. A text from Alira. Thank you. But you don't know everything, Mr. Venora. Not yet. The countdown clock hit 0, and somewhere in the distance I heard sirens. Rain hammered the estate roof like drum beats. I should have left. Should have gotten Dorian to a hospital and called this whole nightmare over. But something in Alira's text stopped me cold. You don't know everything. I pulled the car over half a mile from the estate and looked at my brother. He was shaking, bleeding, crying into his hands like a child. Cashin, he gasped. We need to go. We need to get out of here before. Before what? I turned to face him fully. Before the police arrive? Before someone finds out what you did? Or before someone finds out what you're still hiding? His eyes went wide. I don't know what you're talking about. Stop lying. My voice was ice. I'm done with the lies, Dorian. I've been done for years. So tell me right now, what else did you do? He opened his mouth, closed it. His whole body trembled. That's when I heard it. Footsteps on gravel, coming from behind the car. I turned, heart pounding, expecting Jamal or police or... Alira stepped into the headlights. She was soaked from the rain, hair plastered to her face, wearing jeans and a dark jacket. But it was her eyes that made my blood freeze. They weren't scared. They weren't sad. They were cold, calculated, completely in control. Alira, I got out of the car slowly. What are you doing here? Making sure you saw the truth. She walked closer, didn't even glance at Dorian. All of it, not just the parts that make you feel like a hero. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? She pulled something from her jacket. A phone. She tapped the screen and held it up. On was a video. Security footage from the warehouse where Noam was injured. I watched as a machine operator, clearly untrained, made a mistake. Watched as the equipment malfunctioned. Watched as Noam's hand got caught. But then the video kept playing, and I saw something that made my chest tighten. Dorian, walking in a frame, checking to make sure no one was watching. Then deliberately tampering with the safety records, deleting footage, making it look like user error instead of equipment failure. He didn't just deny the claim, Alira said quietly. He caused the accident. Noam was asking too many questions about safety violations, about other workers who'd been hurt. Your brother needed him silent. I looked at Dorian through the car window. He'd gone pale, wasn't even trying to deny it anymore. Jesus Christ, I whispered. It gets worse. Alira swiped to another video. This one showed Dorian meeting with someone in a dark parking lot. Money changing hands. He paid off the safety inspector, paid off the union rep, paid off everyone who could have stopped this. My hand was shaking now, not from fear, from rage. How long have you known? I asked. 3 months. I've been collecting evidence the whole time you were investigating. She finally looked at me, and there was something like pity in her eyes. I knew you tried to fix it the legal way, the proper way. But men like your brother don't get stopped by legality. They get stopped by force. So you had Jamal take him. I had Jamal scare him. She corrected. I wanted him to feel what Noam felt, what I felt, what every person he destroyed felt. Fear, helplessness, the knowledge that no one was coming to save you. If you've ever wanted to rewrite your ending after someone else wrote your beginning, pay attention. Because sometimes the people we try to save are already saving themselves. I stared at this woman I thought I knew. This waitress I'd tried to rescue. And I realized I'd gotten it all wrong. She wasn't a victim waiting to be saved. She was a strategist who'd been playing chess while I was playing checkers. You used me, I said slowly. I used your resources. She didn't apologize. Your investigators, your lawyers, your board meeting. I knew you'd do the right thing eventually, but I also knew it wouldn't be enough. So I made sure there was a backup plan. By kidnapping my brother, by making him confess. She held up the phone again. Jamal recorded everything. Every crime, every cover-up, every victim. Your brother sang like a bird when he thought he was going to die. My head was spinning. The police aren't coming. Alira smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That was a lie. To see what you do. To see if you protect your brother or protect the truth. And you chose truth. Something softened in her expression. That's why I'm showing you this now, instead of just disappearing. She handed me a flash drive. Everything's on here. Video, audio, documents. Enough to put your brother away for 20 years. You can turn in yourself, be the hero, or, or, or you can give it to me, and I'll make sure it reaches the right people. Anonymously. No connection to you. No risk to your company. I looked down at the flash drive in my hand. Such a small thing, but it held the power to destroy everything. Why are you giving me the choice? I asked. Because you earned it. She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the rain on her skin. You didn't have to care. You didn't have to risk your empire. You didn't have to believe me, but you did. So now I'm asking, what kind of man do you want to be? Behind me, Dorian started banging on the car window. Cashin, don't listen to her. She's insane. She set this whole thing up. I didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge him, just kept looking at Alira, at this woman who'd outsmarted my entire family, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Respect. I want to be better, I said finally. Better than my father, better than my brother, better than the man I was before I met you. She smiled, really smiled this time. Then you know what to do. I closed my fist around the flash drive. Yeah, eat dough. I walked back to the car, opened the door, and looked at Dorian one last time. My brother, my blood, the person I'd protected and covered for and made excuses for my entire life. You're going to turn yourself in, I told him. Tonight, you're going to confess to everything, and you're going to accept whatever punishment comes. And if I don't, his voice was shaking. Then I release this footage myself, and I testify against you, and I make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of monster you are. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me anymore. Maybe he didn't. Maybe I didn't recognize myself either. You'd really do that? He whispered. To your own brother? You stopped being my brother the moment you hurt innocent people and felt nothing. I stepped back. You have 1 hour to decide. After that, the choice is mine. I closed the door and walked back to Alira. She was watching me with those intelligent eyes, seeing everything I was feeling. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For being exactly who I hoped you were. And then she did something that surprised me. She reached up, touched my cheek gently, and kissed me. Soft, brief, but full of meaning. When she pulled away, she whispered, once broken, now balanced. Once silent, now sovereign. Then she turned and walked into the rain, disappearing into the darkness like she'd never been there at all. I stood there alone, flash drive in my pocket, rain soaking through my clothes, and realized something. This wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of who I was going to become. I stared at the choice in front of me like it was a loaded gun. Dorian sat in the car, face pressed against the window, eyes begging me to remember we were family. The flash drive burned in my pocket like it weighed 1,000 pounds. And somewhere in the darkness, Alira was walking away, trusting me to do the right thing. But what was the right thing? I'd spent my whole life believing in systems, in laws and boards and proper channels. I convinced myself that justice could be quiet and clean if you just follow the rules carefully enough. But Alira had shown me the truth. Sometimes the rules protect the wrong people. Sometimes the system is the problem. I pulled out my phone, called Marcus. It's 3 in the morning, he answered groggily. This better be. I need you to meet me at the precinct. Now, and bring every lawyer we have. Silence. Then what did you do? What I should have done years ago. I hung up, walked to the car, and opened Dorian's door. He nearly fell out, grabbing onto my arm like a drowning man. Thank God, he gasped. I knew you wouldn't abandon me. I knew. I'm not saving you. I pulled him his feet. I'm making sure you face what you've done. His expression changed. Fear turned to anger. You can't do this. Father's will. Father's dead. My voice was flat, emotionless, and his will doesn't protect you from felony charges. Cash in, please. No, I cut him off. No more excuses. No more chances. You destroyed lives, Dorian. You took everything from people who had nothing. And you did it because you could. Because you thought money and power made you untouchable. I'm your brother. You stopped being my brother a long time ago. I pulled him toward my car. Now you're just a criminal I happen to share DNA with. The drive to the police station was silent except for Dorian's quiet crying. I didn't feel satisfaction. Didn't feel righteous. Just felt tired. Tired of carrying the weight of his sins. Tired of pretending family loyalty meant protecting monsters. At the station, Marcus was waiting with 3 lawyers and expressions that said they thought I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. I looked through every page, memorized every name, every story, every life that had been collateral damage in the Venora Empire's rise to power. And I made a promise. Not to them. They were gone or broken or too hurt to care about promises. But to myself. I would spend the rest of my life making sure this never happened again. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You did good today. Rest now. Tomorrow we rebuild. It was from Alira. I knew without her signing it. I typed back. Where are you? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally. Somewhere safe. Somewhere I can finally breathe. Thank you for giving me that. I wanted to ask her to come back. Wanted to tell her that somewhere safe could be with me. In a world I was going to build differently. But I didn't. Because she'd earned the right to disappear if that's what she needed. Instead I wrote, if you ever need anything. Anything at all. I'm here. Her response came immediately. I know. That's why I trusted you. The conversation ended there. No would-be. No promises of seeing each other again. Just the understanding that some connections change you forever, even if they don't last forever. I stood up, stretched, felt my bones crack from exhaustion. Marcus appeared in the doorway. The press is already calling, he said. They want a statement about Dorian's arrest. Tell them the truth. That justice doesn't have a family name. And the board will have to accept that doing right is more important than protecting reputation. I started walking toward my car. Schedule a meeting for next week. We're restructuring everything. New safety protocols. New oversight. New accountability. Marcus jogged to keep up. That'll cost millions. Then we'll spend millions. I stopped, looked at him. What's the point of having money if we use it to protect guilty people instead of helping innocent ones? He stared at me for a long moment, then smiled. Your father would hate what you're becoming. Good. I smiled back. That means I'm doing it right. I drove home as the city woke up around me. People heading to work. Kids waiting for school buses. Life continuing like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. At least for me. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Months later, the storm returned. I stood in my office on the 32nd floor, watching rain streak down the windows, and thought about how much had changed since that night at the gala. The night I asked a trembling woman who hurt her and started a chain reaction that destroyed my family's legacy and rebuilt it into something worth keeping. Dorian was in prison. 23 years. No parole. The trial had been brutal. Testimonies from victims. Evidence so overwhelming even the best lawyers couldn't spin it. He looked at me once during sentencing, eyes full of hate, and mouthed, "This is your fault." Maybe it was. Maybe I should have stopped him sooner. But I'd stopped him eventually, and that had to count for something. The Quinn Fund was thriving. 40 million had turned into 60 as other companies joined, wanting to be part of something that actually helped people. Noam was in trade school, top of his class, building engines with one good hand and more determination than most people had with two. He sent me updates sometimes, pictures of cars he'd fixed, always ending with thanks for believing in us. Venora Holdings had changed too. New leadership, new policies, new commitment to treating employees like humans instead of assets. We'd lost some investors who didn't like the direction, but we'd gained respect, and in the long run, that was worth more. But there was one thing, one person I hadn't heard from. Alira. She'd disappeared that night and hadn't surfaced since. No calls, no texts, just silence that felt heavier than any conversation could have been. Until today, my assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Venora, there's someone here to see you." She doesn't have an appointment, but she said you'd want to. Send her in. I knew before the door opened. Knew from the way my heart started racing. Knew from the way the air in the room felt different suddenly. Alira walked in, and I almost didn't recognize her. She looked healthy, rested. Her hair was longer. Her eyes were clear. She wore a simple dress and carried herself with confidence I'd never seen before. Like she'd finally stopped carrying the weight of survival and learned how to live. "Hi," she said simply. I couldn't stop staring. "You look different." She smiled. "I feel different. Turns out not working 4 jobs and not living in fear does wonders for your health. Where have you been? Everywhere. Nowhere. Away. She walked to the window, looked out at the city. I needed time to heal, to figure out who I was when I wasn't fighting just to survive. And did you? Figure it out. She turned to face me. I'm getting there. Therapy helps. So does not having to look over my shoulder every day. She paused. I heard about Dorian. About the sentencing. 23 years. Good. She said it without hesitation. He earned every single one. We stood in silence for a moment, both of us remembering that night. The estate. The choice. The kiss in the rain that had felt like an ending and a beginning all at once. Why are you here? I asked gently. She pulled an envelope from her bag, handed it to me. Inside was a letter. Handwritten. The paper smelled like wild lilac. Read it later, she said. When you're alone. When you have time to really think about what it says. Elira, I came to say thank you. She stepped closer. And to tell you that what you did mattered. Not just for me and Noam and Jamal. For everyone. You proved that people with power can choose to be different. I should be thanking you, I said. You're the one who opened my eyes. Then let's call it even. She smiled, but there was sadness in it. I also came to say goodbye. My chest tightened. You're leaving? I'm moving forward. There's a difference. She touched my hand briefly. But I'll never forget what you did. How you chose truth over family. How you rebuilt instead of just burning everything down. Once broken, now balanced, I said, remembering her words from that night. Once silent, now sovereign. Exactly. She squeezed my hand once, then let go. You're going to do great things, Cash and Venora. Just make sure they're things you're proud of. She walked to the door, paused with her hand on the handle. Oh. She walked to the door, paused with her hand on the handle. Oh, and one more thing. Jamal wanted me to tell you he got accepted into a veterans counseling program. He's helping other soldiers now, turning his pain into purpose. That's good, I said, throat tight. Really good. It is. She looked back at me one last time. Take care of yourself, Mr. Venora. Cashin, I corrected. Just Cashin. She smiled. Take care of yourself, Cashin. Then she was gone. I stood there for a long time, staring at the closed door, feeling like something important had just walked out of my life, but also feeling grateful it had walked in at all. Eventually, I opened the letter. Dear Cashin, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not because I'm running away, I'm done running, but because I need to find out who Elira Quinn is when she's not defined by what was taken from her. You taught me something important. You taught me that power isn't about control. It's about choice. The choice to do right even when it costs you everything. The choice to be better than the world expects you to be. I'm choosing to be better too. I'm going back to school. I'm going to study law. Not to punish people like your brother, though that's a nice bonus, but to protect people like me. Like Noam. Like every person who gets stepped on by people with money and power and no conscience. Maybe someday our paths will cross again. Maybe in a courtroom with me on one side and you on the other, both of us fighting for what's right in our own ways. Or maybe we'll meet again somewhere quieter. Somewhere without rain and fear and blood. Somewhere we can just be two people who helped each other survive the storm. Either way, know this, you changed my life. Not by saving me, I was always going to save myself, but by showing me that not all powerful men are monsters. That some of them, when pushed, will choose humanity over heritage. Thank you for being one of the good ones. With respect and hope, Elira. P.S. The world needs more men like you. So stay exactly who you are. I folded the letter carefully, set it in my desk drawer where I'd keep it forever. Then I turned back to the window and watched the rain fall, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the kind that comes from winning. The kind that comes from knowing you did right, even when it hurt. Even when it cost you. My phone buzzed. A news alert. Former Venora executive sentenced in largest corporate negligence case in state history. The article detailed everything. The victims, the cover-ups, the justice that had finally come. And at the bottom, a quote from one of the victims' families. We didn't think anyone would listen, but someone did. And that someone chose to do what was right instead of what was easy. That's what gives us hope that things can change. I screenshot the article, saved it, added it to the folder of reminders, reasons why this had all mattered. Why every sleepless night every difficult choice, every moment of doubt had been worth it. My assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Venora, the reporter from the Times is here for your interview about the Quinn Fund. Send her in." The reporter was young, eager, recording device already in hand. "Mr. Venora, thank you for meeting with me. I wanted to ask, what made you decide to turn in your own brother?" I thought about that question. Thought about all the ways I could answer it that would sound good in print. But I decided on the truth instead. Because I finally understood that family isn't about blood. It's about who you'd protect and who you'd protect others from. And my brother needed to be protected from himself before he hurt anyone else. She scribbled notes. "And the Quinn Fund, why name it after them? Because they reminded me that the people we overlook are often the strongest among us." Elira Quinn worked 4 jobs to save her brother. She collected evidence for months while living in fear. She did what entire departments couldn't do. She held my family accountable. I leaned forward. That's the kind of strength that deserves to be remembered. "Do you still talk to her?" "No," I admitted, "but I hope she's out there living the life she always deserved." The interview continued for another hour. Questions about corporate responsibility, about changing company culture, about what I'd say to other CEOs who discover corruption in their ranks. And I answered every question the same way, with honesty, with humility, with the understanding that I wasn't a hero. I was just someone who'd finally stopped protecting the wrong people. When the reporter left, I sat alone in my office as the sun started setting. The rain had stopped. The city glowed gold and amber in the fading light, beautiful and harsh, and full of people fighting their own battles. I thought about Dorian in his cell, learning what powerlessness felt like. I thought about Noam building engines with scarred hands and a hopeful heart. I thought about Jamal helping other veterans find purpose after trauma. And I thought about Elira, somewhere out there, studying law, preparing to fight for people who needed someone in their corner. The world kept turning. Justice kept evolving. And I kept working to make sure that the next person who walked into my building wouldn't have to fight as hard as Elira did just to be heard. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number. At first I thought it might be Elira. But when I opened it, my blood turned to ice. The message was simple. "Congratulations on your redemption arc, brother. Enjoy while it lasts. 23 years is a long time. But I'm a patient man, and I have nothing but time to plan what comes next." Below the text was a photo. Recent. Timestamp from today. Dorian, in prison, smiling at the camera like he knew something I didn't. And written on the wall behind him in scratched letters. "You have 4 seconds. Cash in." For seconds before I take it all back, my hands started shaking. This wasn't over. He wasn't broken. He was planning, waiting, building something in the dark while I thought I'd won. I stood up, walked to the window, and stared out at the city I'd sworn to protect. And I realized something. This wasn't the end of the story. This was just the end of chapter 1. Whatever Dorian was planning, whatever revenge he was cooking up behind bars, I'd face it. Not because I was fearless, but because I'd learned something from Elira. You don't run from storms. You walk through them. And when you come out the other side, you're stronger than you were before. Once broken, now balanced. Once silent, now sovereign. I saved Dorian's message, forwarded it to Marcus with a simple instruction: start monitoring. He's not done yet. Then I deleted the text, turned off my phone, and went home. Because tomorrow would bring new battles, new challenges, new chances to choose right over easy. But tonight I'd rest. I'd remember the woman who taught me what strength really looked like. I'd honor the choice I made to be better than my father, better than my brother, better than the man I used to be. And when Dorian made his move, and he would, eventually, I'd be ready. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I'd finally learned the difference between justice and vengeance. Justice protects the future. Vengeance only destroys the past. And I was done destroying. I was building now. The world needed builders. People who'd look at broken systems and fix them instead of exploiting them. People who'd choose conscience over comfort. I was one of those people now. And nothing, not my brother, not my past, not the weight of my family name, was going to change that. The storm would come again. It always did. But this time, I wouldn't just survive it. I'd walk through it with my head high and my purpose clear. Because that's what Alira had taught me. That's what this whole journey had been about. Not redemption, evolution. And I was just getting started. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you for being here. This journey, from power to conscience, from silence to sovereignty, is one we all take in different ways. If this story inspired you, if it made you think about the choices you make when no one's watching, drop a comment below. Tell us what resonated. Tell us your own story of choosing right over easy. Because every comment, every share, every conversation matters. You're not just watching a story, you're part of a movement. A movement that says power without purpose is empty. That family loyalty has limits. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop protecting the people who hurt others. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications, because this channel is just getting started. We've got more stories coming. Stories about people who chose differently, who fought back, who transformed their pain into power. Stories that'll make you feel, make you think, make you believe that change is possible. Next week, we're bringing you a story about a teacher who discovered her principal was embezzling funds meant for disabled students, and the choice she made that cost her everything but gave her back her soul. You won't want to miss it. Until then, remember, once broken, now balanced. Once silent, now sovereign. That's not just a line, it's a way of life. See you in the next story. And thank you for being part of this family.